candidates for the Joplin School Board. This program is brought to you through KGCS TV with the Joplin Globe, and I'd like to start by introducing the president and publisher of the Joplin Globe.
Thank you. On behalf of the Globe, Missouri Southern State University, and KGCS TV, I'd like to thank you all for watching and attending the Candidate Connection. I also want to thank our candidates for willingness to give in their time and talents for the betterment of the school system. So thank you very much. And I want to turn the microphone over to Carol Stark. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Stark. I'm the editor of the Joplin Globe. We started doing these in 2007, I realized, and we've had a long partnership here at Missouri Southern. Thank you very much. Tonight, our panelists, and I'll start with the young man at the end of the table, Riley Hartwell. Riley is a Joplin High School senior. He is the editor of the Joplin Spyglass. He's very engaged in what's going on, and he's had a few bylines in our paper. Dave Woods in the center is a independent media consultant, former Joplin Globe employee, and a Joplin voter and taxpayer. At the very end is Joe Hadsel. Joe is our features and social media editor, and he has a son who is in the Joplin School District and also lives right here in Joplin as well.
Thank you very much. And we'd like to thank our audience in the auditorium for joining us, as well as the audience who's watching on television this evening. We have 5 candidates with us this evening who you will be meeting in the next hour. They're listed on the ballot coming up in April. There's actually 6 names listed at that time. However, with the nomination of Lane Roberts to the position of Public Safety Director for the state of Missouri, he has said that if elected, he will not serve, so he's not here this evening. But as we say, there are positions on the ballot. April 7th, 3 positions being decided. There are 2 seats for the 3-year term. Candidates are Jeff Koch and Annie Sharp. 1 seat for the 1-year term. Candidates are Melinda Campbell, Nancy Good, and Jennifer Martucci. And our format tonight will feature questions from our panelists. The questions will be timed. The answers will be answers should be timed, and we'll have a timekeeper in the audience who will be providing those times for our candidates. During the question and answer session, each candidate has 1 minute to respond. At the end of the program, they'll have 1.5 minutes to provide closing statements. But to begin, we have 30 seconds set aside for each candidate to give a brief introduction, letting us know who you are. So we'll start with Jeff Koch.
Hello, my name is Jeff Koch. My wife Shauna and I. Thank you. Hello, my name is Jeff Koch. My wife Shauna and I have been married 20 years in June, and we've got 4 great kids. We've got girls in 11th grade, 9th grade, 8th grade, and a boy in 3rd grade. So we've got all 3 phases of school: elementary, middle, and high school. Next year, 3 high school girls. We've moved to Joplin in 1996. Our kids have grown up in the district and haven't been anywhere else. We're members of Christ Community United Methodist Church. I've got a bachelor's in human resources from the University of Central Missouri and a master's from Missouri State.
Thank you. Annie Sharp.
Hello, I'm Annie Sharp. I was born and raised in Joplin, Missouri. I've always been a Joplin Eagle. I have 7,500 kids plus about 1,200 staff that I watch over. I've served on the school board for 15 years. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I have a passion to serve this district, and my parents said to volunteer back and give back to your community, and being on the school board is probably the best volunteer job anybody could seek.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Melinda Campbell, and I am a proud resident of Joplin, Missouri. I have lived here my whole life. I was born and raised here in Joplin. My husband and I have been married for 23 years. He serves in the United States Air Force, which makes me very proud. We have 2 children that are at the high school. We have a junior and a sophomore, and I work at Empire District Electric Company, attended here at Missouri Southern State University.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Good. I have lived in Joplin for over 40 years and have been a volunteer in the Joplin community for all of that time. We have 2 sons who both graduated from Joplin High School. They are now raising families of their own, whether they be 4-legged or 2-legged. And I just have a passion for Joplin schools. I have owned my own business and feel like I can help in those areas.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Martucci, and my background is in education. I've worked for a K-12 school district, a community college, and a major university, and in those jobs I gained experience in school budgeting, human resources, grants and contracts, state and state accreditation and state compliance reviews. And so I feel like I bring a breadth of knowledge to the school board. My husband Patrick and I have been married for 25 years, and we have four kids.
Thank you very much. Now we'll begin our questions from our media panel, and Joe, you will start us off this evening.
Candidates, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate your time. A recent state audit pointed out issues with how the board enacted the Sunshine Law and followed it, including pointing out a defiant response. If elected, how strongly will you press to keep as many discussions as possible open to the public? And does that include standing up to fellow board members, school administration, and or an attorney?
And I'll start once again with
To answer your question quickly, I was actually at that reading of the public forum, and I asked that specific question. What the administration noted was they were following the letter of the law, and there was no reason why anything else should be added. My point is we don't need to do the absolute minimum. I think we need to do the absolute maximum.
Thank you. Annie, sure.
On the Sunshine Law that was listed in the audit report, the board feels that going forward we're going to work to be more proactive, sharing closed session information when appropriate. And I know that the time that I've been on the board, when we've put closed session items, we don't list all 17 that you can list. I've been in board meetings where if it's a closed session item that was not listed, we have come out of closed session and rescheduled that meeting. So going forward, even though I've been on the board through those times and what we were cited for in the audit, I think there's time with the way the media has been changing, that we can do a little bit better sharing closed session items just because of the way you can get information out in the future. And so looking forward, we're to have at least 2 new board members, maybe 3. I think with that group of folks that you'll just see a more proactive answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. Melinda Campbell.
Thank you. I was also at the reading of the audit, and I do feel that the Sunshine Law is there for a reason, and it does have a stated purpose, and we do need to be proactive in the fact that if there is something that is to be open and shared, it needs to be open and shared. Bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Good.
I was also at that meeting, and I belong to other organizations where we have to abide by the Sunshine Law, and I think it's a very important law to follow. It's one that gets you in trouble if you don't follow it, and I think you need to be as open, not just because of the Sunshine Law, but I think the community has a right to understand what is going on and what is happening within the school district. So I think it's very important that we follow the Sunshine Law.
Okay. And Jennifer Martucci.
Okay, well, the Sunshine Law is just that. It's a law. It's not a question of whether you follow it or not. You don't really have a choice. And what it says is that the district business is to be done in open forum with public access. So that's what we follow. As a board member, I would follow the law. I would not break the law. So whether it went against what another board member wanted to do or what the board attorneys would do, that's not up for discussion. It's a law.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Dave Woods, and this time I'm going to flip the order for answering. So we have a variety. It's not always the same person answering the question. So Jennifer, you will be answering the question first this time.
Some members of the community have voiced their criticism of what they call the administration and board's overspending and overbuilding. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this premise, and how would you proceed if elected?
Well, as far as overspending and overbuilding, I think the fact that we've had to borrow money to pay for what we have built, I think that indicates that we've overspent and we've overbuilt. We need to stay within our budget for future projects. And so as far as that goes, I would agree with that. As a board member, I think that what I would have to offer is asking questions. Asking the questions is it something that we need or is it something that we want? And I think that we need to make the distinction between those two items. And if it's something that we absolutely need, then we need to find a way to make it happen. If it's something that we just want, I think that we need to be prudent with the money and wait on some things.
Thank you. Nancy, good. Same question.
I think the board has looked at what the community needs to look like. I think the board has built us buildings that we can be proud of going into the future. And I think they are going to reflect in what we can do in economic development for our community. Our schools are just a picture of what our community can and will look like. And without those schools, the community will fail. So I believe that the board has done a very wise thing in what they have built. God made the plan. He destroyed the buildings and we rebuilt. And therefore, I think we've done the right thing, and we need to go forward.
Thank you. Melinda Campbell, question regarding spending.
I would probably have to say that I don't think that we have overbuilt. I think it is just a projection of a positive room for growth as our community continues to grow. I do feel that the spending is probably a little in excess. I do understand that we are waiting on reimbursements from some other monies coming in, but I do not look at the size of the building, the high school or the middle schools, or future growth in the district as overbuilding. To me, that's just a way to look at future growth in the community.
Thank you. Annie Sharp, question for you as well.
As far as the buildings themselves, when we went out, we had design teams, and we followed the wishes of the design teams of when we went on about 25 road trips. We had staff members, community members, and I felt really positive about what was built because architects were with us, those people were with us, they cherry-picked everything we needed. At the high school, we're switching to career paths, and so we had business people involved in that, and they gave their input of what kind of graduates they wanted. And in order to do those kind of things, we are getting our kids college and career ready. So the interpretation also of overspending, the way the finances work, or we have to pay up front. And I think once this year is over with, that our community will be very pleased on how we've handled our money. The state audit showed that we had not mishandled anybody's donation, anybody's money.
Thank you very much. And Jeff Koch, final response for this question.
Thank you. I think one of the things that happened with this tornado and the spending is we took our eye off the ball. The purpose of the school is to educate our children. Our academic scores have been declining year over year, and we spent a lot of time, effort, and energy into buildings and infrastructure to make things that are very pretty on the outside, and we took our eye off what's important, and is educating our kids. So yes, we overspent, and it caused us to lose focus on the main purpose of the school district.
Thank you. We have one more question for all of the candidates, and Riley will direct that question.
Okay, so later on this week, teachers will vote on if they support collective bargaining. And the question is, do you support collective bargaining for educators? And what do you believe this bargaining power will do in our school district?
Okay. And I'll start in the middle this time, so as we continue to vary the order, Melinda will let you start, and then we'll move to Nancy and go down that direction.
I believe that collective bargaining is necessary within the district. I think it's a way to keep the lines of communication open. It allows the teachers a more formal way to progress through their daily duties of teaching the students. It, I think, in turn makes them more effective educators if they feel that maybe they are being heard.
Thank you. Nancy Good.
I do not believe in collective bargaining for public entities. I think it can be a danger, whether it be taking time out, whatever. But I think collective bargaining can often bring elements to anybody that you don't want there. And I think if the teachers can be heard now, they have a voice, and I think that we are fine where we are.
Thank you. Jennifer Martucci, question about collective bargaining.
Yes, I do believe in collective bargaining, and the reason is because I believe that everyone deserves a seat at the table, and I think that our teachers need to be able to advocate for themselves, and I think that there's not any reason why that process cannot be respectful and productive, and I think that it will make our district a stronger district because our teachers will feel supported, like they have a voice in what's going on, and it'll bring up the morale of the teachers we have. I think it'll enable us to recruit and retain employees as well, because it will make our district, more appealing to future employees.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to this end for Jeff Koch and your response to this question.
Thank you. This is a question that, had you asked me last year, I would have had a different answer. Having a degree in human resources, that's the other side of the collective bargaining issue, where you don't like to have anything come between the employees and the management team. You need to be able to work together. But that only works when both sides are operating with a certain degree of respect and common goals. I think right now we're in an environment where, as I had mentioned before, we've taken our eye off of educating. Giving our teachers an opportunity to voice concerns without the fear of retribution, I think, is something that I have to support at this time. It's not something that I would have agreed a year ago, but I've learned quite a bit during the last 12 months looking at the inner workings of the school.
Thank you. And Annie Sharp, your response to this question.
As far as the collective bargaining question, at the present time we do meet and confer, so both teacher groups do come to the table with their concerns and their solutions to different things and their requests. So everybody is at the table at the present time. As far as the decision on how they vote, the board will support whichever way this vote takes place. I think it's taking place today or tomorrow. So the board will be supportive of what the teachers request in that vote.
Okay, thank you. We will now have a series of questions where we will have our panelists ask questions to just two of the candidates. So we'll rotate through, so we'll have a chance. The people who don't have the question asked will have a possibility in the time at the end when they do their summary to respond to these questions. But Joe will start us off with the question, and we'll start with, I guess we'll start with Nancy Good, since you haven't had a chance to respond first, so I'll let you go.
I am thankful that I get to take my son to Joplin High School every morning. I'm also thankful I'm not one of the poor guys that have to make a left turn on Indiana. And as messy as it is in the morning, it's even worse in the afternoon. Traffic issues are a concern. If elected, first of all, how do you think the district handles traffic? And how would you improve the process if elected?
Truthfully, I have not been there at that time of day. I come by close, but I have not been around that traffic. I have not looked at that issue. I do think a lot of the traffic issue probably falls to the city of Joplin, and I think overall a better communication needs to be had between the city of Joplin and our school district, and they need to work on that together as an entity. I don't think the Joplin School District can do it by themselves, nor can the police department. I think it needs to be a joint effort, and that we need to do more of that in this community going forward.
Thank you. And Jennifer Martucci.
Sure. There are some issues, I agree. My kids drive to Joplin High School, and we've had to find alternate routes for them to get there in the morning. I believe one of the problems is that there's one way in, one way out. And that's also an issue at Cecil Floyd as well. There are issues at Columbia with parking on the street in front of people's homes. I know that people have issues with that as well. And so we need to look at those and keep in mind safety for the kids and issues for the neighborhoods. And what seems to work well is Kelsey Norman, since they've made their addition, they have something that works. The roundabouts at East and South seem to be effective, so I think that we need to take a look at what's working and see if we can implement some of those strategies at the schools that have issues.
Thank you. We have another question that will be directed to two of the candidates, and this time I think Annie Sharp hasn't had a chance to respond first, so I'll let you handle this one. And Dave has a question for you.
You bet. A partnership between the district and local arts organizations has been proposed, which would result in the development of shared space and programming at Joplin High School's Performing Arts Center. Do you support this model for public-private ventures for the district?
I certainly do. The arts programs in Joplin schools have been around. In every yearbook I've seen, fine arts programs have excelled. And to be able to, and I think you're referring to Connect to Culture, partnering with the school districts. We've toured different schools that have this partnership, and your auditorium is run by a school employee, so school always has first choice of what performance is. And then when Connect to Culture would bring a performance in, those folks would go and be teaching their trade to our students. There's always an educational component when you bring in a group. We do that now with Pro Musica. They go to elementaries. And so, yes, I'm very much in favor of partnering with Connect to Culture because just, like I said, for every yearbook I've ever seen, the fine arts program in Joplin schools from late 1800s to present are just beyond reproach. And so that would be an awesome thing to have.
A question dealing with public-private ventures, and I'll go back to this direction to Jeff Koch.
Thank you. I look at it that we have the building, we have the infrastructure, we have the opportunity to share with other taxpayers. The only concern I have is who is going to maintain it, who's going to check it in and out to make sure that it's returned in the same fashion that was left as. Going to the show choir competitions, I've seen sometimes they're young kids that have a different meaning of clean than I might have. And we want to make sure that we don't run down the building quicker than is planned, but I don't have any problem with sharing public-private as long as each carries their own weight.
Thank you. Another question directed to two of the candidates from Riley, and this one we will have Melinda Campbell answer first. So, Riley?
Okay, Melinda, so students at the high school are currently being encouraged to use self-regulated learning right now. And this is where students are, for the audience, are encouraged to learn on their own without direct instruction of the teacher. And how do you feel self-regulated learners, if at all, will improve academics in the schools?
I'd have to move the microphone.
Stop talking. Stop. Well, self-regulated learning, to me, is a concept that would be very new to me. Having been in school many years ago, you know, the teachers taught. I don't think I would be opposed to self-regulated learning, but we would need to make sure that we instilled good academic guidelines for the students. My question would be, who's holding the students accountable? Would that be, you know, test scores? Some students, I think, can function like that, but I think some students are not self-disciplined enough to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. And Nancy Good, we'll let you follow up with this answer as well, dealing with self-regulated learning.
I really like the idea of self-regulated learning. I think in today's society, we are seeing people of all walks of life who have different capabilities. We've always known that we have people who are left brain and people who are right brain. In my time, I've learned you have people who can do math better than they can do English, and everybody should be able to work at their own level in their strengths. Where they need help, that help needs to be available for them. But if we can regulate and not have a child who is bored, as one of my children was simply bored with school, I think self-regulation is just a great tool in teaching today.
Okay, thank you. We will continue our questions. Our panelists have a number of other questions to ask, and this next one will be directed to all of the candidates. So we'll go back to everyone answering this question. And Joe, I'll let you begin with this question.
All right, we have a new Joplin High School. We have a new East Middle School. We have upgrades at Kelsey Norman and other facilities. Of all the construction, of all the new facilities that we have since the tornado, what's your favorite part about them, and what do you like the least?
And I will start at the end again for Jennifer, give you a chance to lead us heading back this direction with the answers. So Jennifer Martucci.
Some Some of the things that I think are positive about the new construction is the amount of space that our students have. They're no longer crammed into hallways and trying to move within from classes to classes. That was a problem I know at the old Joplin High School. Another thing is that we've really taken into account safety, providing the new safe rooms at the schools, and bringing in the community as well. So that's a plus. I also think that having Franklin Tech connected to the high school, being able to offer those opportunities is really outstanding for kids that look for those vocations as well. Some of the things that I think may be on the negative side would be some of the choices that were made in the spending. For example, the seats, changing out the seats at the high school and the gym, the AstroTurf on the practice fields. Some of those things that I think maybe weren't the best decisions that were made, and I think that those may be the negatives that people see to those.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Good.
I was part of one of the design teams that went out and looked at schools, and I think one of the things that we saw in numerous schools that probably is my very favorite thing would be the learning stairs, the conversation stairs that are in the schools, the opportunities that gives the kids to network and to talk to others and just get away to their corner of their own if that's the way they want to be. I think the brightness of the schools, I think the modern look to the kids, the clean look to of the schools, that's what I've seen. Not having a child in school, I've not seen how the kids react. And where I'm a business partner is one of the older buildings, so we don't have the amenities of some of the new schools. So all I can see are the positive parts. I really have not seen any negatives to this point.
Okay, thank you. And Melinda Campbell, your response regarding the new facilities.
Well, I think the new facilities are just absolutely beautiful. It is something that we should be very proud of. You know, when you drive through town and you see that beautiful facility, it is just something that makes you want to be there. It makes you gravitate towards that when you look. It's very positive for the community. I too feel that the larger facility allows us more programming. Franklin Tech in general, as Jennifer said, the programs that they offer are so much more broad and wide than I think we had in our other facility just due to the size. One of my favorite concepts that are there, excuse me, are the think tanks. Allows kids to step out of the classroom and work in smaller groups to make themselves, you know, more appealing to things.
Thank you. She saw the time cue. That's why we quick wrap there at the end. For the audience, they can't see, we have a timekeeper showing time cards. So, Annie Sharp, your response.
What I really like about our buildings was it was a team effort to build the buildings. It was staff-driven, student-driven, community-driven. So I take pride in having all that input, because as just one person or just 7 board members, that would have been a great undertaking to get the facilities we have. The major upgrade for Franklin Technology Center, I think that will draw people in. We have those collaborative spaces, the flexibility. The buildings are large, but they're very flexible in how you can rearrange them. We had to think into the future. The design team had to really, I listened to them. They go, what will the students need 10 years from now? What will they need 15 years from now? So they made a concentrated effort to try and think really into the future. I love East Middle School because the kids get to go down to Soaring Heights, and so they get to be role models to an elementary school. I think that is absolutely awesome.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jeff Koch, your response to this question regarding the facilities.
Some of the things I like the most are the functional aspects of it. I do like the way they've integrated the safe rooms. Some of them have gyms, some of them have extra classroom space in there, and that's making good utility purpose of that funding. I like at East and Soaring Heights, they have a joint auditorium similar to this. It's a little bit bigger. Instead of having 2 auditoriums, they can share space in one. That cuts down on the cost, the overhead, the expense. Also at Franklin Tech, the culinary arts area is very nice. everything. It looks like you're going into a working kitchen. You're giving kids that might be interested in that field a good opportunity to study there. On the lease side, there's a lot of extra upkeep and cleaning. There's so much glass in that high school. I would be amazed if they could keep it all clean all the time. And the safety aspect of both East Middle School and the high school. Active shooter, we have to think about things that are not necessarily pleasant. It needs to be functional as well as aesthetically pleasing.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've reached about the midway point of our program this evening. We're going to take a short break to allow our candidates to get a drink of water. We'll let you who are watching at home take a quick break, and we'll be back shortly right after this. As well as a media panel asking questions this evening. So you, the voters, going to hear about some of the issues, some of the questions that people are asking throughout the community. Our panel will continue with questions at this point, and Dave Woods, you have a question that will be directed to two of the candidates, and Jeff Koch will get to answer this one first. So, Dave?
Do you think that individual school board members should be able to express their personal views to the media and to the public outside of the official channels that are currently established?
Yes. Okay, I save my time for later.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's important because the public is not electing us as a single board. They're electing us as individual people with individual ideas, and they need to be able to communicate with us, and they don't need to wait for a specific forum where they can have their time to talk. And if they can't get a response or an answer back, it may be clarification. But I think, yes, the candidates, the board members need to be able to share their own personal opinion, and we can always clarify we're not speaking for the entire board, we're speaking for ourselves. And I think that's why people are electing us to share our opinions and be their voice at those meetings. So, yes.
Thank you. And we'll move down the line to the second person, Annie Sharp.
I believe that we're one of 7 on the board, and when decisions are made, that the decision that is made needs to be a decision that's carried forward. For people to express their opinion is like Mr. Koch said, as long as they say it's their opinion, I think that's perfectly fine. But if you're speaking, usually if you're a board member and you speak, it's taken as you're speaking for the board. So you need to have that good clarification that if you're speaking your opinion, that you state that you're speaking your opinion and you're not speaking for the board.
You would have no problem with an individual board member addressing the media following returning from a closed session or after a meeting, as long as they express that they were not officially commenting on behalf of the board?
That would be a board decision. I mean, when you get the 7 board members together, they set the ethical ways they want to behave and how they want to address media. And so just from my past experience of being on the board, we want to be a unit of one, and we want to, so that would be something in the future that the board, like I said, we're going to have 2, maybe 3 new board members. We have 2 newer board members at present. So that's something they need to discuss as a board. But no, I mean, during the board meetings, they're expressing their opinions before a vote. So if there's a dissension in vote, that's perfectly fine to express their opinions, as long as they're speaking for themselves and not as for the board.
Thank you. Riley has another question for two candidates, and Melinda Campbell will get to answer this one first.
Okay, so the Missouri School Improvement Program is the state school accountability system for reviewing and accrediting public school districts in every school district in the state of Missouri. And what do you think that the purpose of MSIP 5 is, and should it be taken into account when making decisions as a board in regards to student academics?
Okay, Melinda.
At this time, I do not feel that I have enough information on that topic to be able to make a reasonable sounding answer at this time. That is something I would need to have the opportunity to do quite a bit more research on before I can give you an answer on that. But thanks for asking.
Thank you. Nancy Good, your response to this question.
Again, that was something that I have not had time to look at. I certainly believe in the state looking at accreditation and reviewing what's happening, but I do not have enough information to be able to answer that intelligently.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to now have Joe ask a question for all five candidates. So as our media panel continues to ask questions, and we will begin, I think we'll start at the end again with Jennifer and move back this direction. So, Joe.
Okay. All right. During the first question, you said most of you were at the reading of the audit. So you heard the audit note that school reserves are too low, but other school buildings in the district are in need of remodeling or rebuilding. So what do? Do the reserves get your first priority? Do those get built up before anything else gets done? Or do you think the district can build reserves and address those building needs at the same time?
I think that it can be addressed at the same time. I think that as far as the reserves go, we need to look at spending our money wisely. Again, it goes back to those needs and wants, and we need to make sure that we're covering our needs. And if we need to give up some things and sacrifice some things in order to do that and build up our reserves and put some money away, then we need to do that. I think there are different pots of money that we can look at for those buildings. Columbia is in a state of disrepair, and it needs, there are no FEMA-approved safe rooms at that school for those children this spring, and so I believe that we need to make that a priority, and they were promised during the bond issue that money would be set aside to pay for that school, and it has not been done. So that needs to be a priority, but I think that we need to look there, if there are grants or contracts out there that we can find that can fund those projects, then we need to go ahead and take care of those.
Okay. Nancy Good, response to this question regarding funding.
Would you repeat the question for me, please?
Yes. In a nutshell, what gets your top priority? Building back the reserves, or seeing if there are ways to complete construction upgrades at schools?
I think we need to be looking at both of those. I think it's very important to build reserves, but I also think it's important to rebuild our schools. We obviously, from the tornado, we used a lot of our reserve funds, and we would have been hurting very badly had we not had those reserve funds to be able to work through our tornado damage. So I think it's very important that we get those reserves built back, but we also, I think we owe it to West Central and to Columbia to build them buildings that equal what our other students have. So I think it has to be worked on at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Melinda Campbell, your response to this question.
I do think it also is very important that both of these be addressed at the same time. Building the reserves is very important for future growth and for any other expenses or things that might come up. That is very important that the reserves are built back up. But it is also very important that we maintain safe buildings for our students, continue to repair the schools that need repair, that are in ill repair.
Thank you. Annie Sharp.
As far as building up fund balances, we are very fortunate that we've always historically had large fund balances. The finance department had planned on an economic disaster, that hit when our fund balances were at 26%, and that's what's carried us through the economic disaster and the tornado disaster. To build those back up, each year you look at your priorities and what you need to get done. The Columbia Safe Room ran into some mining issues. It is going up as promised. The West Central Safe Room has been completed. The facility, long-range facility planners, which Jeff Koch was a part of, put Columbia and West Central at top of their list to get remodeled, get updated. So that's when they present to the board tomorrow night. The board will have to look at those and see. But each year there's different priorities, and you just can't say, I'm going to build fund balances, I'm just going to do this. You have to take it all into account to get the fund balances back. But historically, we've had high fund balances, and I anticipate we'll be doing the same.
Okay. Well, Jeff Koch, your response to this question that everybody's talked.
Thank you. Obviously, you can do both, but unfortunately what we've been doing is we've been borrowing from the capital spending each year to pay back the additional loans that we've already taken out. So it makes it difficult to repair the schools that need it because we're already borrowing against that future revenue. So to do both is nice to say, but we really are going to have to prioritize. If it's a safety issue, I think that gets a #1 priority. If it's a issue of comfort, I would say that might have to take a second. I toured East Central and Columbia, and although the buildings are not very pretty on the outside, on the inside they had classrooms that had 16, 16, 17, 16, 15, 16, 18, 19, 22, and 23 kids in them. That's a perfect size room. My son at Soaring Heights last year, very beautiful building, had 31 kids in his room. It's too many. So we're looking at the outside. I think we need to be focused on what's on the inside.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question. I believe, Dave, you're going to ask of 2 of the candidates.
Yes. Before this forum, I reached out to several parents who have children at Joplin High School. And the one thing that kept coming up, aside from the number of parking spaces at the high school, was bullying. Apparently, a lot of students and parents believe there is a significant issue with that in our district. What do you think about that? Do you think an adequate job has been done to not only educate folks on the ills of it, but to punish those who commit it? And as a school board member specifically, what would you do to take action to try and give parents a little solace that their kids are not being bullied?
Okay. And Nancy Good, I'll let you answer this one to begin.
Tough one. I think bullying has been an age-old situation. It was when I was in school. Maybe it was not as pronounced because I don't think you had the media that was focused on it the way it is today. What the answer is, I probably don't have a good one. I would hope with the board and with the educators, the teachers, the principals, we could come up with a solution that would help the situation. I think to cure it would take a long time.
Do you think an adequate job is being done currently, though?
That I do not know because I'm not aware of what is happening in the schools.
Our next responder will be Jennifer Martucci.
I think that too. I do believe that bullying is a problem, and it has been historically. I do believe that the district should have a zero tolerance policy. I think that the use of technology in the high school is an issue as well. I've heard of students bullying each other using district technology, bullying teachers using district technology, and I think that there needs to be a zero tolerance policy for that, and I think that the children, there need to be consequences. There are consequences in life, and I think that kids need to learn at this stage of the game, and perhaps that will make them better citizens in the future.
Thank you. And we have one more question to all the candidates, and you have that one prepared to go, Dave?
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best possible score, how would you rate the performance of Superintendent C.J. Huff, and why?
And we'll start with Jeff Koch.
Okay. And can we do it like academics where we give different areas different grades? Okay, all right. So I think as for marketing and information dissemination, I think that's a 10. I think he's done a really good job of getting people connected through Facebook and through the campus portals and these activities. I think from a financing point of view, it's not been so good. and 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'd go in the middle to a 4 to a 5. If I had to say teacher retention, I would go on the low side there as well. I think the turnover has significantly increased in the past 7 years. And if we look at, there's certain pockets of excellence, and I'm getting the sign, certain pockets of excellence. He's been very supportive of the extracurricular activities, and the archery team has done very well. It's a new one that's come up. The Constitution team has always done well. I think there's certain pockets of excellence in certain areas that could be improved.
Okay, thank you. Annie Sharp, your response to this question.
As far as evaluating the superintendent, Dr. Huff has done an excellent job when he's focused on, when the board gives him a directive to focus on. When we first hired Dr. Huff, we asked him to raise graduation rate. His focus was on graduation rate, and it has raised. The teacher retention is down to 10% of turnover. It has been going down. We had a couple of years that were higher. The focus on the tornado, he was thrown into a situation that no superintendent has been thrown into. He had a focus on this, on getting students and staff back into buildings, and that's what. So I believe that when we have directed, the board has directed Dr. Huff to focus on an area, that he achieves that focus. Right now, we're going to be, I assume that the board going forward, we've always had student achievement, but that was not a direct focus for Dr. Huff during this disaster. So I would rate Dr. Huff at 8.
Thank you. Melinda Campbell.
As far as rating Dr. Huff, I feel that's a very loaded question, and I don't know that anybody can give an answer that's going to appeal to anybody at this time. This would be just my own personal opinion. I have not done his job. I am somewhat aware of his job duties. Like I said, or like Annie said, with the tornado, I would not want to have been in his shoes when that disaster came through here. I think as far as meeting the promises that he said, getting our kids in school, as a parent, I was very excited that my children had some normalcy and some place to go after the disaster. Again, I know I'm not giving an exact answer, but I think it would probably have to be about a 7. Again, until I have sat down and done his job or reviewed his job description verbatim, I can't really answer that, but overall, that would be my answer.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Good, your response to this question and the superintendent.
I think Dr. Huff has done a phenomenal job through our rebuilding. He had a major issue dumped in his lap, and to see that all of these schools have been rebuilt in 4 years, I think is remarkable. I think the fact that he kept in touch with our families, that he kept our kids in our schools, I think he worked to keep that community together and to give those kids a sense of normalcy, and I think that's amazing. At the same time as he was looking at new buildings, I think the system was looking at new ways of educating, which we have done in the high school, which we've done with Franklin Tech. We have many new programs that are now available for our kids. So I think we are on a path for some good things to happen in Joplin, and I would probably rate Dr. Huff with an 8.
Okay. And Jennifer Martucci.
Okay, there are a lot of broad areas that I think you can evaluate someone in, and a lot of things that you take into consideration. Our school board recently evaluated Dr. Huff's performance, and they rated him a 2.5 out of a 5. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say that equates to a 5. The Missouri State auditors also looked at our district and the management of our district as a whole, and they came out with a fair rating. The fair rating on a scale of excellent, good, fair, and poor. So a fair rating to me would equate to about the same, about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. So I would have to say I would probably agree with those two evaluations, and my number would be a 5.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panelists for the questions this evening. As they stated, a lot of these questions are things they've heard people discussing in the community, trying to reflect the voters and what your questions are. As we head toward the last part of the program, each candidate has a minute and a half, 1 minute and 30 seconds for a closing statement. So it's your choice of what you'd like to address. If you want to address a question that was not asked to you, we will have the timekeeper guide us through those questions. I'm going to start in the middle this time because Melinda's kind of in the middle bouncing back and forth. So we're going to let you start off with your answer. What is your closing statement you'd like to share with our viewers?
In closing, I do want to address the parking issue as a parent because I do have 2 children that drive, and I would think that the city could do something about that. I have 2 children that are fear for their life driving through the parking lot and driving onto the side streets. So I do think that is something that could be looked at. In closing, I am just very excited to have the opportunity to have the vision to even step out of my comfort zone and try to make a difference within the community. Out of about 45,000 people, you can see here that there's just a very small number of us up here that are trying. I think one of the main things we need to do is work to gain the taxpayer trust. And when we gain trust through our taxpayers, it will move our district and our community in a more positive fashion. We need to ensure that financial decisions are made and that we consider the total realm of the budget. And as a board member, that is something that I would be very willing to do. People that know me, I'm not a yes man. If you ask me, I will tell you exactly what I think. Might not be what you want to hear, but I do have a lot of experience within the district. I've served on lots of committees, and I just hope to have the opportunity to be elected to serve my community and my school district.
Thank you. We are doing closing statements, and Annie Sharp, a minute and a half for you to share some comments as you close.
I would just like to reiterate that I have always been a Joplin Eagle. And that I think I bring to the board a positive attitude. There's great things to come for Joplin schools. We have, just the high school itself going through the career paths. Our focus coming forward is going to be of academic achievement, college and career readiness. I think my strengths are that I can go out into the schools. I have the time, I have the passion. I love being around kids. I love being around staff. I've been able to spend 15 years doing that almost as a full-time job. To be in and just to go into a school and see, a student asked me to go see him play ball. They asked me to go do something, and you show up, and just I can provide that relationship to our students that may not have that. And that's my joy, that's my passion. I hope that I get reelected so that I can continue to do that, because I think I have the attitude and the positive demeanor. My weaknesses, things in education change all the time. It drives you crazy. You get ready to do one thing and they've changed the rules and they give you a new target. Sometimes the target's just moving. My patience for that is I like to get things done, but I also understand in education that it changes. If you talk to staff members, they'll say, we did that 20 years ago. It just has a new name. So I just really would like to continue supporting our students and staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Which way are you going?
We're going this way. Jeff Koch, your comments, a minute and a half to share with the viewers.
Mr. Hartwell, I'm going to take your MSEP 5. I went to DESE and I took all the data from 2002 to 2012. I'm a numbers guy, put them all on a chart, charted them all, and looking specifically at academic performance. We've had year-over-year declines in academic performance. Annie's right. I think when Dr. Huff is focused on something, he can do a really good job. I think what we need to do is we need to simplify and focus. Focus on academics. That's something that it's not like attendance, you just show up. It's actually the response to the education that the kids are getting. I'm not all about tests, but tests can give you trends. I heard the moving targets number. Every district in the state has the same moving targets. And they can do it, why can't we? In closing, simplify and focus. There's a whole bunch of initiatives that we've tried over the last few years that seem to be shifting focus away from the primary concern, and that primary concern is educating our kids. The things like the health centers, daycares, poverty intervention, and a whole bunch of others. All of these goals are noble. It doesn't fill the primary mission of the school, and that is education. I think once that is taken care of, then we can move on to other activities, but we need to simplify and focus, and I just would appreciate your vote on April 7th.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Jennifer Martucci, your final comments, a minute and a half you'd like to share with the viewers and the voters.
Well, the areas that I would like to see as a board member to contribute to and make some differences in would be our financial responsibility. Again, with the level of our fund balances, I believe we're almost to the point of almost living paycheck to paycheck, and that's not good business-wise, and that's not being responsible with the money that the taxpayers are giving us. And so I would like to see a change in that area, and I think that we can. We just need to button down and do what we need to do and make some good decisions on that part. Academic achievement, we've had 14 different curriculums in the last 8 years. 3 different math curriculums in the last 5 years. What I would like to see is the district commit to a 5-year plan for curriculum, and in doing that, I think that our teachers will have some consistency in what they're teaching, our kids will have some continuity in learning, and I think that once that happens, I think we'll see our academic success come up. As I would also like to, I would supporting our teachers, and teacher retention and morale, I think, is an issue that I'd like to address as a board member. Lastly is openness of the board. I think that we need to be open to the public and encouraging to the public, and perhaps even go hold our meetings at an area, at a place, one of the middle schools or something, so that we're accessible to people where they can come in and feel comfortable to take part. So I would appreciate your support on April 7th.
Thank you. And Nancy Good, your comments you'd like to share with the viewers and the voters at the end of the program.
I think my concentration would be academic achievement, but I think it lies not only in the responsibility of the school board and our administrators and our teachers, but I think it lies in the responsibility of the community. And I think we have to have more openness, more help from the community, more community involvement. We talk about the poverty level and worrying about that. If you sit in a classroom with a child who is in poverty, you can see the pain in their face and you can feel the pain in their hearts. If they've got a hungry tummy, they're not going to be able to learn. If they've slept on the floor all night and they've not had a good night's sleep and things are going on, they can't learn. So we have got to help take away this poverty from our area. And while that is not the full answer, I think it's part of our answer for our whole community. And our schools are our community, what we're going to be tomorrow. So I think it's very, very important that we open our hearts and that we open our minds and we include the community and we include conversations with our community as to what we need to do for our schools going forward. And I'd appreciate your vote on April 7th.
Thank you. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Thank our candidates for taking time for this forum. I think it's a valuable program. The Joplin Globe helping put this together, thanking the Globe for doing this as well. This is a chance for you, the viewers, the voters, to hear from the candidates. April 7th, of course, is the election. There are 3 positions to be filled, 2 for a 3-year term and 1 for a 1-year term. You've had a chance to meet the candidates tonight. I'd like to thank not only the people who are here watching and people watching at home, but people you can't see behind the scenes, our students at Missouri Southern, because this program provides them a great hands-on opportunity for television production. So we thank that operation at Missouri Southern for supporting this program as well. So on behalf of Missouri Southern, the Joplin Globe, and KGCS TV, I'm Judy Stiles, and I'd like to say good night.